Hoping everybody is planning on a happy and safe and Christ-honoring Christmas celebration, and we're glad that you've chosen to join us tonight. We're in week 15 of our 1 year of discipleship using the Discipleship Journal, and we're reading this week in the Gospel of John, chapters 3 through 7. And so we're going to be looking at a particular passage tonight as part of our Bible study. My name is Dave Ketchend. I'm the associate pastor at Old Zion Hill Baptist Church, and we're glad that you've joined us. I've entitled tonight's Bible study, this is from John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9, as Our Helplessness and Christ's Power. And we're going to be looking at the healing of the cripple there in Jerusalem, and take some lessons from what we're going to be looking at tonight. So we're looking at John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. If you have your scriptures, you want to open up and read along. Otherwise, the passage will be appearing on the screen. We're only going to do the first 9 verses. We're not going to do the entire context, which actually the whole story of this particular event runs through about verse 14 or 15. But we're not going to have time to do the whole story. We're going to look at the beginning part of it, and then I would encourage you that as you read, especially if you are going to be watching this video and using the lessons that we're looking at tonight, as far as the application time is concerned, when we use the space SPACE acrostic, read the last part of the story or the last part of that account, and see how it bears out in the life of the cripple, what we're going to be talking about as far as the lessons that we're going to be gaining tonight. So John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the Sheep's Gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, and they waited for the moving of the waters. From time to time an angel of the Lord would come down and stir the waters. The first one into the pool after each disturbance would be cured of whatever disease he had. On one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, he learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, so he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid answered, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes in ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. All right, this is one of the miracles that John records, the healing of the man at the pool of Bethesda. We're not sure what feast Jesus was going up to, probably Pentecost, because in the next chapter 6 it says it was the time of the Feast of Pentecost, and so that's just sort of the assumption that Jesus enjoyed and made it a point to attend the feast days and the feast celebrations of Israel during his earthly ministry, and so he went up to Jerusalem for the feast. Now, there's a portion of the story that it sounds a little odd, about the stirring of the waters by an angel, that kind of thing. Let's talk a second just about that. The Pool of Bethesda was one of the primary water sources inside the city of Jerusalem. It was actually a very large area. It still exists today. It's not as big as it was in Jesus' time, because Jerusalem has been torn down and rebuilt and torn down and rebuilt. But the Pool of Bethesda is still there. And in Jesus' day, it was quite a large thing. It was very deep enough to swim in. And it was surrounded by 5 colonnades. In other words, it was an ornate place, a place where people could go and get out of the sun and this sort of thing. And so part of the beliefs, folklore and the belief system was that disabled people, if they were could go to the colonnade, and when the waters were stirred, the first one in would be healed. Now, there's no record that ever actually happened to anybody, but that's what the people believed. Now, the Pool of Bethesda is fed by a subterranean spring that runs from outside the wall of Jerusalem under the city, and it empties into the Pool of Bethesda. It's called the Gihon Spring. And if you've ever been to Jerusalem, perhaps your tour took you to both the Pool of Bethesda and the Gihon Spring. It still is a active water source. It's an artesian type well, spring water, and it was the primary water source for Jerusalem. So in Hezekiah's day, King Hezekiah, he extended or enlarged the pathway that the Gihon Spring flows by having a tunnel chiseled out through the stone underneath the city of Jerusalem, where it naturally empties into what became the Pool of Bethesda. They enlarged the pool, made it deeper and that kind of thing for it to be a suitable water source. Now even today, because the Gihon Spring is a free-running stream and the tunnel is a water path that the water rolls under the thing to still feed the Gihon Spring, periodically the moving water will trap air, and even these days sometimes the air will be pushed along by the source of the water and it will bubble up into the Gihon Spring. So even today the waters are stirred, okay? And so the belief was that an angel did it back in Jesus' day. That's why all the disabled people were there, because they believed that if you were the first one in the pool that you would be healed. Like I said, there's no historical record of actually being a healing, but people believed it, and so they were there hoping that the waters would be stirred and that they might have a chance to be healed. That sounds very superstitious to our modern age and scientific age and those kinds of things, but you know, we're not too far away from that kind of stuff. I mean, things in nature that we have grown up believing in. People carry rabbit's foots. My grandmother used to, when she would say something, she would say, "Well, knock on wood." Okay, I never quite understood what knock on wood meant, but apparently it was something that she believed that if she did and said, that something good would happen. So we're so sophisticated these days that we kind of ignore those kinds of folklore kinds of belief systems, but actually they're very much a part of us even today in our modern world, and certainly in parts of the world that kind of stuff is taken very seriously, even in this modern day. Jesus made no comment about angels stirring the water or anything like that. He didn't make any comment about that. But as he was walking down to the Pool of Bethesda, he saw this man. He was paralyzed, okay? So he wasn't just lame, but he actually couldn't move. And he had been coming to the pool, or he'd been paralyzed for 38 years, and had been coming to the pool a long, long time, trying to be there when the waters were stirred and perhaps be healed. And so here's the setting. Jesus sees the guy, and he asks him some questions, and he makes some statements to him. And we're going to take our lessons from the things that Jesus said, because the title of the Bible study tonight is Man's Helplessness and God's Power. So let's take a look at some of these things that Jesus said to him. He walks up to the guy and he asks him a question. He says, "Do you want to be made well?" Now, in the English translations, depending on the translation you get, that quote could read, "Do you want to get well? Do you want to be cured? Do you want to be made well?" And all of those are legitimate translations of the verb for the action of being made well. Do you want to get well? You want to be cured? You want to be made well? I particularly like the rendering of the verb there as being, "Do you want to be made well?" Because Jesus is asking him, that you've been there for 38 years, you've been trying to get in the pool, you hadn't gotten in the pool yet. For you to get well, you have to be made well. Something has to happen beyond your ability to heal yourself. And so you might think that's kind of a foolish question, because the guy's sitting there going, well, duh. I'm sitting here paralyzed. Of course I want to be made well. And so what he said to Jesus was, I don't have anybody help me into the water. When the water's stirred, somebody always gets there before I do, and so I never make it when the water is stirred. I never get in there in time to be healed. So here you have a guy, when Jesus asked him, do you want to be made well? His response was that I am doing what I know to do. I'm doing all that I know to do, and it's not enough. The implication is, yes, I've been doing this for 38 years. I've been paralyzed for 38 years. Yes, I want to be made well. It's just that I'm doing all I know to do, and it hasn't helped me much yet. So Jesus accepted that as the man's answer. It still, though, is an odd question. Do we want to be made well? In pastoral counseling, for the years that I've been doing it now, over 40 years, a lot of people have come and asked for help with a lot of problems. Not just physical problems, but emotional and marital and relationship and drug addictions and all kinds of stuff. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a couple that I actually conducted their marriage ceremony 22 years ago. And they've lived their life. They've made a life together. They've raised kids. The husband was injured on the job with a catastrophic back injury, and so he is now on disability and has a lot of problems with his back. Their youngest daughter is graduating from high school this year, and they're facing the empty nest syndrome. And so when the wife called me, she said, me and my husband would like to come talk to you. We're just not on the same page about what comes next. And so that was the basis of our meeting. And I listened to them. They were talking back and forth about the things that they're missing each other on. They're not quite in sync about things, you know. Not the kind of thing that I would call just real critical breakup, divorce kinds of stuff, you know. But they were concerned about it. I remember asking them the question. I said, how bad do you guys really want to address this stuff? Do you really want to address these things? Because what you're describing are marital relationship habits that have been going on for 22 years. If you really want to deal with it, how bad do you want to deal with it? Now that's essentially, I think, what Jesus was asking. How bad do you want to be made well? The man answered in a way that indicated that he had been trying everything he knew to do, and that he hadn't had opportunity or hadn't got well yet. But he indicated that, I think he would have indicated that to Jesus that, yes, I want to get well. I want to be made well. Jesus was going to do something with him that he couldn't do for himself. All right, then, so Jesus then gave him a command: get up. The man's paralyzed, okay? And so, get up. If we are going to experience God's power in areas of our life where we are helpless, the first thing we have to decide is, how bad do we want to have a change? How serious are we? Because our willingness to be made well is the key to God's power being orchestrated in our life. There are a lot of people out there who are happy in their dysfunction, who are satisfied in their weaknesses and satisfied in their problems. They don't really want to be made well, even though they will say so. They really don't want to be. Then Jesus immediately said, get up. He gave him a command. Now that command required the man to do something that was impossible. It required him to act on a command of Christ and match his will with the will of Christ, saying, get up. That's the point, that he had to respond to Jesus' command. And it was impossible for him to do it in his own ability. So his will, his choice, had to match up with Christ's command. That's an essential to experiencing the power of God in your life. Jesus says, do you really want to be made well? Get up, which is an act of my will now, responding to the command of Christ. So the guy gets up, of all things, and then Jesus says to him, take up your mat. Okay, now the mat was like a pallet, maybe being a small stretcher. Okay, Now, this guy had been being carried around on this stretcher, or one just like it, for 38 years. Now, imagine what it was, going through his might be going through his head. He has just been told to get up. He gets up. He's been paralyzed for 38 years. He gets up, and Jesus tells him to pick up the very mat they've been carrying him around on. Kind of a silly thing to do. Why? Why? I don't need that now. What do I need that thing for? Okay. So now there was a willful decision to respond to a command of Christ, and now there's a willful act of obedience. Jesus told him to pick up the bed, pick up the mat. Now, parentheses here, if you will read the rest of the story that we're not going to get to tonight, read the rest of the story and you'll see why Jesus told him to pick up the mat. But at this point, all Jesus told him to do was pick it up, and the man, out of an act of obedience now, obedience to the command of Christ, reached down, picked up the mat. And then Jesus said to him, walk. And the man walked. So he had responded to the command of Christ. He had acted with a desire, with an indication of a desire with his faith to match up to what Christ was asking. I'm willing to do what you asked me to do. I'm going to make a willful choice to obey your command. I'm going to make a willful choice to obey your instructions. And now Jesus said, walk and be on your way, which is exactly what happened. He walked away, and Jesus disappeared into the crowd. All right. To get the significance of those three things, you need to read the rest of the story. So once I have experienced the desire to be helped, once I have responded, matching my will up with Christ's will to get up, and once I've learned and experienced to obey His commands, then Jesus says, now you're to walk in these things. You're to take your life and walk with the understanding and the reality and the habits and practices of matching your will with mine, understanding and following my commands, and doing what I tell you to do. Doing those things, this man experienced he was made well. And really, when you get right down to it, those four things, when we do them in our lives, we will also experience the power of God, and we will be made well in the areas of our life where we're not doing as well and not doing the things that we feel like we would like to do or that God wants us to do. Many people are satisfied in their dysfunction. Many people are satisfied in their chains. Many people are satisfied with the status quo. When Jesus says, do you want to be made well? Too many times in counseling, I've had people tell me why it can't be. Why, making the excuse, well, I tried that before. Or arguing with the command of Christ why it won't work. Just the other night at the children's Christmas bash, was discussing with a fellow believer about following and obeying the commands of Christ as far as engaging lostness was concerned. How do we engage lostness and witness to people? And I was telling him and showing him in Luke chapter 10 the methodology that Christ uses about how we are to engage lostness. And he was telling me why that won't work. Giving me all kinds of reasons why that won't work. I'm sitting there and says, well, then you're probably not going to, I'm thinking to myself, chances are you're not going to engage many people who are lost. So we want to make space for Christ in our life. We're going to look at the acrostic that we've been studying all along, SPACE. Is there a sin to confess? Is there a promise to claim? An attitude to change? A command to obey? Or an example to follow? The lesson tonight, do you want to be made well? Are you willing to obey the command of Christ? Get up. Are you willing to put your action to His commands? Take up your mat. And are you willing to go through your life walking in light of those actions? Obeying Christ's command, matching your will with His, and following His orders. We're going to take a couple minutes, a couple seconds here for you to review the slides that with the 4 points on them and our space slide, and be open to what Christ tells you. Okay, glad you joined us tonight. Hope you have a good Christmas. It's upon us. Can you believe that? Christmas is here, and so Christmas Eve services will be Thursday night at the church, and we invite you to come and be a part of that. And we hope that you have a safe and joyous Christmas celebration. We'll talk to you later. Good night. Just want to remind you about the D-Life journal that we're using. We're going to be using this for the next year as our church's daily Bible reading and our discipleship tools that we'll be using throughout our ministries. The journal is appearing on your screen. That's the book that we're going to be using. If you would like one, you can contact the church office. The number there is appearing on the screen. Talk to Pam, and if you would like to get a copy of the D-Life journal and use it, either in a discipleship group or your Sunday school class, or just for your personal daily Bible reading, or as a part of our Wednesday night virtual D-Life class, we'll be using this book to guide us week by week by week in our Bible studies. So if you would like one, contact the church office, and we'll be sure that you'll get one. We'll hope to see you soon. Talk to you later. Goodbye.